a playlist original.
First man to walk on the moon.
It'll be a hell of a ride.
It's a job so difficult, we're gonna have to start from scratch.
We need to fail down here so we don't fail up there.
This isn't just another trip, Neil.
We have serious problems.
Do you think you're coming back?
5, 4, 3, 2.
First Man, rated PG-13.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Back to the Blockbuster Presents Deep Dives, where we talk about some of your favorite movies, or maybe some movies that you might have forgotten about. I am happy to have my boy Wes on again. He actually was on, summer. I guess it was for Halloween H2O's 25th anniversary, but it was with a few other people. So, it's a little harder to kind of get points across when there are other people, in the discussion. But we did like what he had to say on that particular episode. And I was like, if you ever want to come back, you can come back whenever you're ready. But I got busy. I'm assuming that he got busy too. And then we kind of changed the concept for the deep dives for us to like reach out to different people, different guests week after week. And so I reached out to Wes last week, and this came together pretty quickly. Usually when I ask someone, hey, Kay, do you want to do it? And what movie do you want to pick? They take a little bit to think about it, but he did right away. And that actually worked out very well. So thank you, Wes, for joining me on here once again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. I love talking about Halloween H2O, and I'm so excited to be here again. I did know right away. Honestly, I've been dying to talk about this movie, if I'm being honest. The movie that I picked. Well, actually, before I get into the movie that I picked, my name is Wes. You can find me at Wes Talk Movies on TikTok. I also run the Film Somniacs podcast on Spotify or wherever you listen. And that's with my wonderful co-host Film Gunch. And and I'm just so grateful to be back here on Back to the Blockbuster. I love this podcast. I think it's great. And the movie that I picked for today for us to speak about is First Man, the 2018 film directed by Damien Chazelle, starring Ryan Gosling, the story of Neil Armstrong and the journey it took for NASA to get people on the moon. And yeah, I knew immediately that I wanted to talk about this film because honestly, I feel like it's one of the most underrated films of recent history. Like, I don't ever hear anybody talk about this movie, and if they do, it's kind of like, yeah, whatever. But I think it's an incredible film. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I was surprised by how underrated it is too. I mean, I told Jackson, who's the co-host on the main show, that we were doing this, and he was pumped for the discussion, even though he's not involved in the discussion. He likes the movie a lot too, but he made a similar comment that it feels pretty underrated. And I actually was going to ask you, why do you think that is, before we got into specifics about the movie? Because I mean, Damien Chazelle is coming off of Whiplash and La La Land, and two big films in different ways, right? Like Whiplash didn't make a ton of money, but it was a good kind of introduction to him as a filmmaker, and also got some Oscar love as well. And then La La Land was financially successful, and of course, earned him an Oscar as well too. And so he's coming off of those two really significant films for his career, and all signs point to this one being on the same level. This movie got really good reviews. I think it has a 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, so reviews were good for the film. It did get nominations at the Oscars, but they were all mostly technical ones, which is kind of surprising too. But why do you think it kind of got is considered underrated after that start?
I have no idea. Like, all the signs point to it being a success. Ryan Gosling is a huge star. Damien Chazelle was like the new kid on the block director at the time, kind of, who had just had two movies that people really loved. I don't know. Maybe they flubbed it up with the marketing. But it also just blew my mind. I was like, especially today when I was looking over what it did get nominated for and what it eventually won, I was surprised.
Yeah.
Like and then I was looking at what did win, and I guess I'm happy kind of what did win, because like I wouldn't want Black Panther's Oscar for its score to be going to anything else. I think Black
Right.
Panther really deserved that.
Right.
It's an incredible score, but I would have loved to see First Man's score get nominated at least. Like,
Yeah,
it's
that
like I
was a
wouldn't.
big snub, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan
Yeah.
Gosling, like anytime anyone from Bohemian Rhapsody or what was the other movie? Bohemian Rhapsody or anytime anyone from Bohemian Rhapsody or Vice is nominated, give that nomination to something else in First Man, and I would have been
Yeah.
happy. but like, yeah. And then in the end, I think it only walked away with Best Visual Effects, and
Effects, yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, but it's really
Yeah.
bizarre because it's a beautiful film.
Yeah, I was surprised too, looking back on it and watching it again, what it wasn't nominated for. I remember at the time that Claire Foy was like in the conversation for her particular category, and then I know she got a Golden Globe nomination, but they had the Oscars, but she was a big part of that discussion leading up to nominations. And I watching it again, she has some really strong moments in the movie too that really surprised me that she didn't, build on that momentum that she clearly had at the time. And even Ryan Gosling, it's a really Ryan Gosling's performance is wonderfully kind of understated, which kind of it's great that we're talking about this movie now in the wake of like the stuff that he's doing now, which I think is kind of cool because he is clearly multi-talented. He can do anything. He can play drama. He can play comedy. He is clearly having a fun time in his career right now, like between doing Barbie and then doing The Fall Guy, which I heard got really good reviews at South by Southwest, and he got again really good notices for another comedic performance. But looking like knowing that and then watching him in this, it just really shows how like multifaceted he is as an actor.
Yeah,
and
incredible actor.
Also shows that every performance doesn't have to be so big. Like sometimes it's just like the quieter ones that you notice more, and that's why I kind of felt while watching him in this. Like there was a lot of like even sometimes it wasn't even the things that he was actually saying. It's just like his expressions and how he carried himself in the movie. I thought were pretty powerful without going over the top or doing too much. And I was trying to think back to that time, like if he was a part of the conversations of as far as potential Oscar nominations. And I do remember Claire Foy being a part of the conversations more than him per se, but he really should have as well, I think, for this.
Yes,
I thought he was really good in it.
Absolutely, I agree 110%. I think this might actually be my personal favorite Ryan Gosling performance actually of all time. I think it's amazingly understated. And Claire Foy, I think this is definitely my favorite Claire Foy performance too. Granted, I've seen a lot less of her than I have of Ryan Gosling, but she is incredible. She and him, they are so matched in their skill of just having like characters who are so emotionally like like they are like hiding all their emotions and keeping everything kind of close to the chest, but like they still like you can still see that in their eyes because they're so good at just face acting. It's crazy. And I think it's an incredible film when it comes to the performances for sure.
Yeah. Did you happen to catch this in the theaters when it came out?
I did. I saw this at the City Walk AMC on the big IMAX screen, and I drove like all the way up from Inglewood 3 times to see it. So,
nice. All right.
I loved it so much.
This is very rare, guys. I never on the podcast, it's very rare that I get to talk to anyone that lives in the LA area on here. Everyone's like on the East Coast or Canada. So I just know that I personally know all that where he the place he just mentioned, because I've been there numerous times. So it was just nice to actually hear someone say like, I know where that is, and I've been there a lot. Do you remember what it was like seeing it on when you saw it in theaters? I saw it opening night at my local theater at the time. It was a decent crowd for an opening night. I think I thought that the movie was going to do a little bit better based on that opening night when I saw it. But yeah, I was wondering what your experience was like.
Right. I think I saw it opening night, and then I saw it again the following Monday, and then I saw it one more time maybe the week after. And
Right.
yeah, I don't remember the crowd. I remember that like I remember a funnier side story is that my friend that I went with the second time confessed to me that he was a flat earther after the fact, and he was like, "That didn't
Oh,
happen."
Jesus.
And I was like,
So,
"Oh my goodness." Um, yeah, so and that kind of threw a wrench in the friendship a little bit. We kind of
oh yeah, that
grew
will,
apart
dude.
after that. But yeah, that's that. I remember that more than the crowd for sure. But yeah, it was just a stunning movie. I remember just I think that might have been the first IMAX film that I had seen on a screen quite as big as the City Walk AMC. Um,
Yeah,
and it just like it was so incredible. And the sound effects and I mean this movie is technically really impressive. It's so
I
engaging,
agree.
and seeing it on that big screen just it blew me away. It's up there with one of my favorite cinematic experiences, I think.
Yeah, I remember what I was most kind of caught by was seeing just how different this movie, even though this is, a third outing, but like each one of his films up to that point were so different. And then the fact that it was like, okay, this guy can handle what felt like a big movie, even though it's mostly like, a drama and all that, but it still has a lot of big scenes, a lot of big moments of him handling kind of, visual effects and all that. And to consider what he started with Whiplash and even something like La La Land is, it's different in its own right. I was just impressed. Like I was like, okay, I was like, Damien Chazelle can do so much more, and he probably hasn't even fully shown us everything that he can do yet. That was my first thought while watching it in the theater. I was like,
Right.
oh, like he can definitely be like cinematic in a really significant way. And I
Yeah,
think
he's
that, I
just
mean,
warming
I
up.
think that is, yeah, and it seemed like what that is kind of what the movie was meant to do for him. To be like, hey, this is kind of show everyone that he could do that. Um, and I think he proved it. I mean, I think he proved it mostly. I mean, at least he proved it to critics. I mean, I know that the movie wasn't as financially successful as they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely, it definitely wasn't a bomb like Babylon was, that followed for him.
Right.
Um, but I think it did what it needed to do as far as proving, you know, what he could do as a filmmaker, and
Absolutely.
the kind of stuff that maybe studios can maybe offer him instead of saying like, oh, let's not put him in the box. He's not just this one thing. And I think that's what the movie accomplished the most, at least for him as a director.
Yeah, I mean his range in genre is really impressive. I mean, he's only had the 4 films, right? I mean, and
Yeah,
they're like 4 different genres entirely. Um, but in each one, he really connects with like the human emotion of the story, which honestly is one of my favorite things actually about First Man is that I feel like most biopics kind of take a step back and look at the events as kind of like
right.
a passive observer, and that's fine. It's not very engaging. And First Man just really took us into like the headspace of like everything that Neil Armstrong was going through, and like
Yeah,
it it just it immediately connected with me with a person who up till then I just knew was the guy that walked on the moon. Like I didn't know anything about him other than that, and seeing this movie made me feel so connected to him and everything that he went through, and just the journey and losing his daughter and going to the moon and all of that. It was so affecting to me that I went out and I bought the biography afterwards. I still haven't read it, but I
oh
bought it.
nice.
And
Oh
yeah,
yeah, we got it.
and I've done,
Yeah.
hours of YouTube learning about Neil Armstrong since then. But yeah, eventually I'll read the book. But it really made him into a figure that I felt was somebody I could connect with, and I think that's very powerful, and that's something that I wish more biopics would do.
Yeah, I was in your boat too. I knew all the basic stuff, of course, but I thought the movie did a good job of allowing you to get to know the man and uh, kind of his mindset a bit, and I love that you get a sense of his mindset. You get a sense of his wife's mindset as well. And also what I was really caught by too in this film, and I'm glad they didn't gloss over it, is like when we learn about these events, they're so historic, and that's what they talk about, the big achievement of the event and what that all kind of means. But I love that they touched on more than one occasion just the fear of all this too, like this kind of mission, like going out there, like what the risks are. They have that one scene where she basically is like, you need to tell the kids, like, that basically you might not come back. Like, I'm not gonna do it like this. And I thought that scene felt like something that wasn't written. It felt just so honest, and like that is the kind of conversation at that point that they would have, because at that point they've already had friends who, like, because when they were testing all this stuff, like, who had passed away and all that, and there are all these risks that are inherent with doing it, and that was a lot of the stuff I didn't really know about, and I don't think it's something you necessarily wouldn't know about unless you took the time to really learn it, and that's what grabbed me the most. And I'm glad that they didn't gloss over that too. And that is, that would be one of those things if you were part of that family, or in a family that was, had someone that was going to go on a mission like that, like, hey, like, this would be great once it's accomplished, but there are so many risks involved with you doing it, and there is a chance that you may not come back. And I'm really glad that they really focused on that on more one occasion in the movie, because I thought that was pretty honest and spot on.
Oh yeah,
to do so.
That was incredible. Yeah, that was really well handled. And honestly, that scene alone is enough reason for Claire Foy to
that's what I thought, dude. I was like that. I was like, that scene was like, I was like, that felt like the scene. I was like,
it is a heartbreaking scene. Incredible performance, and like, it's amazing. And they're so matched. They're so well matched as actors. I'd love to see them work together again. And I just comparing that scene with the earlier scene when she's trying to get on the radio, right, to listen to whatever's going on, and they have to cut it out because they're nervous about something, and she drives all the way down to the place, and she's like, I just love her performance, and the character that they've written is incredible. I love her so much.
So wonderfully ballsy. Like, she's like, you're not keeping me in the dark. Like,
incredible. She's like, we've already been through enough. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another reason why that's so powerful too. It's like they've already gone through a sense of like this loss, and they're like, don't really want to go through it again. And so it's it's important for her to kind of be in the know of what's going on, and also be realistic about what the risks are, and just being honest about all this too, and being on the same page. I'm glad you mentioned too about their performance, because they do have really like a very honest chemistry with each other, and it's a relationship you root for. But I love that it has all the little like kind of quirks that go along with any relationship, where it's not perfect, but they know each other really well, and know each other enough to like, hey, like, you're nervous about this, like, keep me in the loop. Like, it was all those little things I really appreciated about how their roles were written. I mean, I wish I knew like how true to life, how that was, but I'm imagining they probably got pretty close to kind of what that relationship was.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know. I did read that they divorced shortly after the events that are depicted in the film, like 5 or 6 years afterwards, or something like that, which made me kind of sad to learn, because I was like, man, I was rooting for you guys in the movie.
Yes, I know, right?
Real life is different, but I just think I think their relationship is I love that they focused in on that for the film, because the whole movie they're kind of not connecting. They're both handling their grief of losing their daughter in very different ways. It seems like Neil kind of shuts himself in and focuses on his work, and Claire Foy's character, her name is escaping me at the moment, Mrs. Armstrong.
There you go. Janet. There we go. Janet.
Thank you. Janet Armstrong. She seems to want to take more comfort in I don't know. It seems to me like she has a more nurturing style. She wants to, be there with Neil and go through it together. And as he gets up to go for work, she seems, right after the daughter has passed away, the very next scene, he's like, I'm going to go to work. And she looks like she doesn't really want him to go. She's like, please, I like need you here. But she's like, okay. So they're both like very withdrawn, emotionally. And I think that can be a really hard performance to act, and B, maybe sometimes a hard performance for an audience to read, especially if it's something they don't emotionally understand. And maybe that hurt the film, because there is so much subtext in this film that isn't really said and is more like told in glances between the actors. But it really worked for me. I love that they focused in on the relationship. And then at the end, when they're, Neil has landed and he's in quarantine, and, they look at each other through the glass for the first time. And like, even though there's a piece of glass in between them, it feels like for the first time they're connecting in a really long time.
They're finally connecting. Yeah.
I love and it's just a beautiful moment. Yeah. It's great. It's so well done.
Yep, I agree. I wanted to ask you questions about how the film was shot, and I wanted to read a paragraph from a review and kind of get your thoughts on it, because I don't agree with it. But this person who wrote the review at the time in 2018 said that when he screened the movie, it was an issue amongst other people who screened it with him. And the paragraph says, motion sickness warning. Those who are sensitive to this sort of thing may want to avoid First Man on the big screen. I have noticed that the shaky cam technique loses its stomach churning potency on a TV. That may seem like bizarre advice for a movie that was partly filmed using IMAX 70mm cameras, but it's not these scenes that are the problem. And while it's defensible to argue the stylistic merits of shaky cam for the cramped, chaotic environment within the early Gemini and Apollo craft scenes, Chazelle uses the approach for a variety of land-based family and work environment shots. Although the intention of employing the wobbly handheld shots is to create a deeper sense of immersion, I found the opposite to be true. It is almost an immediate distraction and makes the viewer keenly aware of cinematography and technique. Every time the camera shakes, I was aware that this was a movie. How do you feel about that, and do you agree with that sentiment?
No, I don't agree.
Okay.
I think that I would never call the cinematography in this film "quote unquote" shaky cam. I think that's a whole different thing. It is handheld at times, and it does have like a human touch to it. I love it. I think it's gorgeous. I think it has I think the film itself, I believe it was shot on Super 35 and IMAX 70mm film. It has it looks gorgeous. It has such a nice grain structure. I just watched it on my 4K TV, again for this podcast, and it looks beautiful to me. I would never call that shaky cam. It definitely is handheld at times and has that motion, but it's very intentional. And I think what Linus Sandgren did, he was the cinematographer. I think what he did should have been nominated as well. So it's another thing. It's another category I think it got snubbed in.
It's a beautiful looking movie, and I disagree. You mentioned, there are more than a few handheld moments in the movie. And I remember when I first saw it, I was surprised at first that a lot of that was done on kind of like the land-based things that weren't, that didn't involve the Gemini stuff or the Apollo stuff. But then when I was watching it for this, because honestly, I hadn't watched this movie. I watched it twice when it came out, and I hadn't watched it since then. So this is the first time I watched it in a really long time. But I actually thought that gave a sense of urgency to those scenes that weren't in those situations. And I think that you need it, whether or not you're feeling, whether or not it's any of like Janet's conversations with him that needed a bit of more urgency, like that was aided by the camera being handheld. I actually didn't find it to be a detriment, and didn't find it to be something that, even when I saw it in the theater, it wasn't something that gave me motion sickness or anything like that. And after I pulled that up, because someone sent it to me, because I said we were going to do this movie for this, and they were like, I'm surprised that, like, because I was trying to find other reviews that pointed it out, and there may be one or two other ones that I found. It could have been that this particular reviewer at his screening, that they all kind of complained about it. But Yeah, I didn't get that vibe. I
Yeah.
thought it lended a sense of urgency to the drama, and I think you kind of need that sometimes. And I think I'm not necessarily sure if this is the reason that he did it, but at times, when you're I I think sometimes filmmakers don't want to lose the audience too, and I think you would have to be aware that once you take some of the action out of the space travel stuff and ground it, and it's just it's just a kind of just a human drama at that point, that you have to do little things to keep the audience invested. And I think that could have been some of what was done to maintain the audience focus a bit too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it really does add that urgency, and it helps us get into the emotional headspace of these characters who are, often in kind of a shaky situation. And I think
Yeah.
it was done really well. I disagree completely that it's distracting.
Yeah, and I also don't agree with the statement that when you're watching it, you feel like you're watching a movie. That's something that he said, because of the handheld camera and the
Yeah,
shakiness, that it takes you out of this being a real life kind of drama, and then you're aware that you're watching a film. I never got that vibe. I was completely immersed in what
yeah,
they were doing. I mean, from the look of it to the acting to direction, I I think what a good biopic does is that it makes you forget that you're watching a film at certain points, and that is what this movie did for me. Is that I completely forgot that I was watching a movie. I
yeah,
just felt like I was completely involved in these real people's lives. Even though, of course, this is an event in the past, it almost made you feel like you were there in the moment.
yeah,
And every biopic doesn't do that, but this one I think definitely does.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
completely agree.
I'm not really buying that whole
Yeah,
might be
I'm just
might be
wondering if it
it's
was like a bunch
consistent.
of the screening was already like a little tipsy, and so they were like prone for motion sickness or something.
I know, right? They had a few
And they're all like, "This
they
is
took
making me
back a
sick."
few.
Yeah, yeah,
And then they're just gonna blame it on the shaky cam at this point.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's my theory because it looks
Oh
great
man.
to me. I would have never. That's a bizarre critique, honestly. I mean, it's not the most bizarre critique that's been leveled against this film. I
Oh
remember when
yeah,
it
there's a
first came
few,
out.
huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, there are
there
definitely a
was it
few.
was really people called it like unpatriotic or something. They were saying it was like anti-American because they like didn't like show the exact scene of them planting the flag. I
Planting the
mean,
American flag. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you still see the American flag on the moon. It's there. It's in the movie. They did take a shot of the American flag. It's
Yeah.
you know depicted in the film. They just didn't show the scene
They
of them taking a pole
them
and shoving it
planting
into
it.
dirt. Yes,
Yeah,
and
they
apparently that
addressed
was
that too.
yeah,
At the time, Florida Senator Marco Rubio described the omission as total lunacy. Chazelle responded with a statement saying, "I showed the American flag standing on the lunar surface, but the flag being physically planted into the surface is one of several moments that I chose not to focus upon." And then when he to address it further, whether or not it was a political statement, he said, "No, my goal with this movie was to share with audiences the unseen, unknown aspects of America's mission to the moon." Basically trying to say that we all know that moment
right. We've
already.
all seen it. We've
Uh,
all seen it in elementary
yeah,
school. They've shown us the tape. Like we've all
yeah,
seen it.
and I
Uh,
never thought I would actually quote something that once President Donald Trump said, but at the time, when the movie came out, he's of the omission. He said it's almost like they're embarrassed at the achievement coming from America. I think it's a terrible thing. When you think of Neil Armstrong and when you think of the landing on the moon, you think about the American flag. For that reason, I wouldn't even want to watch the movie. And
yeah.
then, actually, following the film's below expectations opening at 60 million during its opening weekend, some analysts speculated that the flag controversy was partly to blame because of that.
I would agree. People who follow Trump follow him, very religiously. So if he says don't watch the movie, a big bunch of his followers are going to avoid the movie. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that is accurate. I think that's an accurate analysis to make. That I think is such a example of just like misleading like reporting though, because like every headline I said saw film doesn't depict the planting of the flag, and it's like, yeah, that's technically true, but like the way you're wording it makes it sound like we're ignoring the fact that
It's almost like they
like,
omitted it. They didn't omit like
yeah,
it being there.
Yeah, right.
It's like
It's
they
still
didn't
there.
change
It's still
history by
there,
any means.
guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And
It's like
another,
you want an actual shot of him planting it there. Like,
yeah,
I mean, and I yeah, that's yeah.
it
What
was
were
a
you gonna
really
say? Sorry.
bizarre like controversy surrounding the film, and I remember actually my younger brother was even like saying like I'm not going to go see that because they intentionally changed historical events for the film. And I was like, what historical events did they change? And he goes, they didn't show the flag, they didn't plant a flag in the moon. And I was like, where'd you read that? And he shows me this link, and the headline was like, Buzz Aldrin blasts new film. And like the funny thing is you click on the link where they say Buzz Aldrin blast film, and it just links to a tweet where Buzz Aldrin goes, I'm so proud to be an American, and it's a picture of him on the moon, and that's it. And it has nothing to do with First Man, the movie, at all. And that is what that article linked to as their source. And I was like, that's not what he said. He didn't blast the film.
You gotta beware of clickbait.
Yeah,
especially when it comes to that. That's
so there was just a
crazy.
lot of people that
I
really fell for that, I guess, at the time.
yeah. Yeah, and I agree. Like, you don't necessarily. I agree with him. Like, being like, he wanted to focus on the things that we did know, and that is something. And granted, I guess you could have had like a big cinematic moment where you see it, and that probably could have been powerful. I mean, he's a great filmmaker. He could have made it powerful, but I didn't feel a certain kind of way having it not be there either. I wasn't just like, oh, why'd they do that? I mean, I kind of, unless they are so left to center, I respect almost anyone's artistic choice for what they decide to do.
Right.
And this one wasn't something that needed the controversy that came from it.
Yeah.
And I would hope that that's not what made this movie underperform. But I'm trying to imagine if a pocket of the audience would be like, oh, I don't want to see it now. But maybe at that time that could have been true. I don't know. It's crazy to think.
It was a really weird time for sure. And as it is now. But
no, hasn't changed.
Yeah. It was a I remember thinking I really expected this film to do better. And when the Oscar nominations came around, I was like, oh, this is its chance. This is its chance to shine. It's going to get a bunch of nominations. And then it didn't. And it just seemed like the random controversy surrounding it just really like diminished any excitement people had for the film, I guess. And I think that's really disappointing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm looking at, so I was like, that was the year of like Bohemian Rhapsody, and
that was the year Green Book won,
like a star. Oh, okay, that makes me more upset because that is I'm not a huge fan of that film in particular. I mean, it's not like it's bad, but it's not great. I kind of agree with it being one of the lesser like Best Picture winners, let alone earning nominations. It was a pretty decent. I mean, A Star Is Born, Black Klansman, Black Panther. I think First Man could have easily. I'm not a huge fan of Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody can absolutely be taken off that list. First Man deserves the spot.
So I remember seeing Bohemian Rhapsody in theaters and being like, this is kind of lackluster. But then it got to the Live Aid recreation, and then I kind of got caught up in that. And then by the time that was over, I was like, and I remember being like, was that good? I can't. Or did they just fool me? Or did they just fool me into thinking it was good? And then once it like thought about it more, I was like, no, it's not that good. And then Rami Malek is good, but then once I broke that down more, I was like, not as great as everyone made him out to be. And then you see something like Rocket Man, you're like, oh, that was infinitely better than Bohemian Rhapsody. But yeah, First Man could have easily taken some of these slots, and Ryan Gosling could have easily. I don't know. I would have taken him over Rami Malek probably.
I agree. I think it's a more like, I think it's just a more emotionally involved performance too, on top of everything else.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I guess too, when a performance is as understated as Ryan Gosling's was, because it's not like it's a huge one. And I think we've dealt with that with Oscars for a really long time, where the big ones get the recognition, and sometimes the more quiet, reserved ones don't. And that's unfortunate, because I think sometimes there's more power in what's not said sometimes than what is said and what is shown. And that was a lot of Ryan Gosling's work in this. It's more of the looks, reactions, how he is reacting to other characters. You kind of Brian Gosling is interesting because he's good at showcasing, as we've seen just at the Oscars over the weekend, so much joy, but then he also is good at like conveying so much pain too, like in just the way he looks. And there is a lot of that in here where I was like, to know what that guy is like thinking right now in those particular moments to get there. I thought that was just really good work on his part.
Yeah, amazing work. His just that scene when he's on the moon and he's just like flashing back to his family when they were all together and when Karen was still around, and it's like just small moments, but like he really immediately captures that like emotional like grief and like pain, and he's so good at that. He has like a crazy deep well of feeling that he must draw from. It's insane. Like this performance and his performance in Blade Runner 2049, I think, are some of his more understated performance, where he kind of just
Yeah.
he doesn't really say anything, but you still know exactly what he's feeling because he's so good at showing it. And it's incredible. I want to see him do like, I know he's kind of in his bombastic era right now, being Ken and all
Yeah,
that.
he really is.
I would really love to see him go back to doing understated stuff once the Ken hype dies down. As much as I love hyper Ryan Gosling, the best Ryan Gosling is understated.
I like it too because like what he seems, so he did Barbie, he's doing the Fall Guys next. I think he's still gonna shoot that Ocean's prequel with Margot Robbie. So
The
he seems
Ocean's
to be
prequel.
so he seems to be in like a kind of like commercial, which is fine because like looking back at some of his work before a lot of this, he was I mean, other than like we always forget like the like Nice Guys and stuff like that because he was funny in that, and Crazy Stupid Love is another thing that he's really funny in and
Yeah.
completely charismatic in. But I think for like one of my friends is like, dude, I always like he's always just kind of dour and like down and stuff that he's in. Like my friend brought up like Blue Valentine. I was like, yeah, well that is depressing as all get out. But I kind of miss that from him too, and I actually miss that while watching him in this. I mean, but I guess it just proved to me that he's just like he's a dynamite actor, though. He can just do anything, and those are the best kind of actors that can kind of bounce back and forth between different genres.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see someone who can be so funny. Like, honestly, one of the funniest actors probably working in Hollywood today, if you ask me. And then also he can be like just pivot and be like the saddest human being in the world, and he does both like extremely well. It's really exciting. It's so exciting to have an actor like that is working like and very famous. And I don't know if movie stars still exist, but I would say he's an absolute star, like a movie star for sure.
Oh yeah, he is, and I wonder I wonder if he kind of realizes it now because it feels like he just kind of is coming into that.
Yeah,
really, where like he kind of, and I don't know if he like it's weird because he's out there a lot, but he's also incredibly private as a person too.
Yeah,
I mean, like him and Eva Mendes never walk the red carpet together. That's like their rule. They keep their relationship pretty private, and but it's also like juxtaposed with like what he's doing now, which seems to be like he has to be more out there and more, available, and when in terms of press and promoting and all that. So it's really interesting because I don't think he was in this stage when First Man came out. Like I don't remember him being as out there as far as promoting things the way he is now compared to this.
Right. I think Barbie definitely brought him out of his shell.
Yeah, definitely. Dude's a phenomenal actor, and I also think too. I think it helps that he had worked with Damien Chazelle before doing this, and there is probably like a level of like comfortability there to do something a little different and bigger, like for Chazelle, and then also for Gosling taking on playing someone who is well known that people know, because that has to be a daunting task as well. We get to talk about all the stuff that Chazelle took on, but it's also hard taking on playing someone who is real and an American historical figure as well, and that has to be a little scary, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there has to be some trust between like, filmmaker and actor on that level to do that. And I think the prior relationship with La La Land really kind of informed the work that they did here
Right.
too.
I mean, and the stunt work, I don't know how much of Ryan Gosling was actually in that like axis turning monstrous machine.
Oh yeah, dude.
But
I
that couldn't have been fun.
felt that. I felt that
Yeah.
watching it, dude. I was like,
It's okay. Well, that moment, yes, I'll admit with the reviewer in that moment, there's a little motion sickness. But
Oh
that is
yeah,
like
yeah, for sure.
100% intentional. But that's hilarious. Yeah, that's that whole sequence actually I think is really funny when he comes into that room and there's just like all the men sitting in their blue like
Yep.
suits and they got
And there's
the
like
vomit stains on their chest.
vomit. Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
yeah.
gross.
They've all been
Yeah.
through it. Yeah,
The unglamorous life of being a NASA astronaut, I guess.
yeah. What a lot of movies do that deal with space travel, they that do it well, is kind of convey the claustrophobia of being in those situations. And I thought that this movie too, with some of the sequences, did that really well. I get whenever I watch a movie like this and those scenes come up, I get because I don't like the idea of being confined kind of situations like that. And I thought he did a good job of like putting you there. Uh it's interesting because like it's so uncomfortable, but for these guys, what they're trying to accomplish, the outcome is will be so worth it, if they succeed, right? But it's just this, the build up to it is so uneasy, and I think they convey that really well in the film. In a few, I think a lot of the scenes that depict, like from like the Gemini stuff and the Apollo stuff, I thought really did a good job of conveying that sense of claustrophobia and uncertainty a bit.
Oh
I think
yeah.
the best kind of space travel movies that do that.
Yeah. I
And I
mean,
think
they're
too.
like
Oh yeah, go ahead.
no, yeah, they're like cramped in there. I feel it too. It's especially that Gemini scene when the fire breaks out and they're all, kind of already
Dude,
strapped in.
that scene, like so I watched. It's interesting that when I first saw the movie, I didn't go and like research. Like I was like, oh, I wonder what that was all about. It wasn't until I watched it for this that I went online. I was like, how accurate was that? And just reading about it, it was. I mean, the depiction of it itself, and then the, kind of the brief description that you get after it was
Yeah.
pretty accurate. And then the more I read about it and how they found them in there, man, like it was more the more detailed. It gets way more detailed,
Yeah.
but it was can't imagine that. And I thought that that scene I think is one of the better ones in the movie, just as far as like what it conveys, that kind of like terror that conveys
Yeah.
of being in such a confined space, not being able to really get out there. And they build up to it where there seems like there's this like the communication isn't like too good at that point, and you can feel like, oh, like that something is gonna go wrong.
Yeah.
And once that like little spark goes off, man, I was just like, like that
Yeah.
completely like uncomfortable. And that sequence is so
Absolutely.
well
So
done,
intense.
but terrifying. Yeah,
Yeah. And
completely
the
terrifying.
immediacy of it, like the way it like the sparks to the end of the scene, like the explosion and it all being over. It's just so quick.
Yeah,
Yeah, that scene sticks in my head for sure because that's horrifying. And it's so sad to think about all those men. They're just running, these tests for this, this
that is the
crazy
crazy part
insane.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Insane.
not trying to make sure that it all works.
Yeah.
And like
And
that is what
and then
happens.
they lose their lives. It's yeah, I mean, it just shows the scope of what NASA was doing at the time and how risky every aspect of it was. It really is kind of
Yeah,
just pure insanity that they that it was even a program that happened. Blows my mind every day to think about it. But it's a great scene, so well done.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
Ryan and then Neil Armstrong gets the call while he's trying to, get funding for the project for the
Yeah.
continuation of the program. So a bit of dramatic irony there. It's just really well done.
Yeah, I agree. How do you feel about so the score? composed by Justin Hurwitz. Guys, I think the score is amazing, and um, I think in my mind I thought that it got recognized, like in my head. I think I was like, but the fact that it did is a big kind of
Yeah.
deal. Like if anything, I was like, this should be the thing. if you're
Yeah,
gonna like
absolutely.
not if you're gonna say that there are like other actors a little bit better than Gosling and other actors a little bit better than Claire Foy, this feels like a guarantee. And then it wasn't, and I'm just completely surprised by because one, the music just conveys so many different emotions, and it has so many different levels of being big in certain moments, soft in other moments. Like he really runs the gamut of like really adding a lot of layers of emotion to the film. And I don't know, I'm surprised that it really missed the mark with Academy members, because it's really great piece of music. Even compared to his other scores.
That was my biggest disappointment when the Oscars were nominated when the Oscar nominations were announced that year, was it not receiving a nomination for best score. I was like, how is that even possible?
Awesome.
It was just crazy to me. It's such an amazing score. I think it's like a harp most of the time, and there's like a theremin, and it's so interesting and like otherworldly and haunting and sad and melancholic. It's just all the things wrapped up in one that you would even want from a score. And at times it can be really triumphant, like when they're coming, about to land and the music swells, and it's that same theme that plays throughout the movie. I think it's Karen's theme, and it's just I could get emotional right now talking about it because it's so good.
No, it is really good.
It's one of the I think that's the biggest snub. That's one of the biggest snubs in Oscar nomination history, is not nominating.
And I
the
think
score
people
for First
felt
Man.
it. I think the people felt it at the time too. I do remember that everyone was. I mean, that was definitely on it when people were predicting in our little like cinephile circles, like, oh, what's going to get nominated. I think everyone had that score on their bingo card, and they were like, oh, like what the hell, like what's going on? It definitely should have got recognized. It's really I'm reading here that the score was performed by a 94-piece orchestra with instruments such as the electronic theremin, like you said, and a Moog synthesizer, as well as vintage sound altering machines, including Leslie speakers and an Ecoplex, in order to balance vintage and electronic sounds as well.
It's an incredible score.
And then like when you look at his scores across all of Damien Chazelle's films have been so good. Like all very like different and good. But like that was a real big snub for me. I couldn't believe that they overlooked it, and because the music is pretty much a character in and of itself. And
it's
First
incredible.
Man, it adds so much to the movie, and I really can't believe that they overlooked it. Still can't.
Same. I've been listening to it in my car ever since I rewatched the movie for the podcast.
Nice.
That's been on repeat. I've been like, how did this not get nominated? It's so good. Amazing score.
Now, how do you feel about the win for best visual effects?
I mean,
because it's interesting too, because like the effects, like they're good. It's interesting when you think about visual effects, because you have this idea of like it's very uber expensive and like big special effects. And while this movie does have some, I mean, I wouldn't describe a lot of it as like huge in the way that you would think of like, oh, this would get recognized. But that thing is also in the power and how it's used, and in the ways that Chazelle chooses to like showcase it in the movie. I love that it's not like I thought it was cool that a movie won for that, where every scene isn't dominated by visual effects. And it won because the moments that it is used in the film are significant, and they're powerful, and they're strong. And that is why I thought that win was pretty cool and significant for First Man in the end.
Yeah, I mean, when you frame it like that, I agree with you completely. It is really cool to see a film that isn't just a bombastic CGI fest win best visual effects in this day and age. That's really exciting. At the time, I think I just felt kind of disappointed that was the only thing it won, and I just didn't think much more on it. I was like, "Oh, thanks for the little visual effects award, but this deserves a lot more." but yeah, I think the way you framed it is a lot more positive and optimistic, and I agree with that. It's really cool to see, that it did get recognized for its practical effects and the sparing CGI that it did use and the effectiveness in which it put all of that together. I think that is really actually significant, and I agree.
Yeah, I was really, it's interesting when you look at films differently once you have seen them like on the big screen and you're like rewatching them for something because you have to like analyze them for something like this or everything like that, and then you're reading up about the movie and what it was, what particular accolades it got, and that was like my first thought. I was like, well, it is cool that a movie like this, that because it'd be so easy to give it to the Marvel movie of the moment or something that was like crammed with special effects, and to give it to something where it's like, hey, in these few scenes the visual effects are spectacular and they stand out amongst another film that has them from wall to wall.
Right.
I think that really stood out. I want to ask you too, as far as Chazelle as a film, like when you're watching, when you see something like Whiplash or La La Land, and then you find out that he's doing something like this, did you even think that he was even capable of doing something like this, or was it like, oh, let's see what this guy can do, before
Right.
making any like snap judgments about it?
I think my biggest hot take probably for the film community is that I actually don't like La La Land very much. I think it's like really
Oh, there you
technically
go.
amazing. Yeah, that's my hot take for the day. But I knew that that it was really well put together and that it's a technically really brilliant film. And honestly, any shot from La La Land that you take, you could frame and put up on a wall because it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The story itself did not work for me. That's my one takeaway. But like, I knew that Chazelle had taken on something as big as a huge Hollywood musical and that he did it successfully, even if I didn't personally enjoy it. And it
Yeah.
seemed to me that those skills, at least from a technical aspect, could then be, applied to making something like a big, grand not sci-fi, but science history film.
Yeah.
And I think I don't think I ever thought about it really. I just was like, I was just excited because the I don't even know when I first heard about First Man. I think I was just excited because it looked good. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I was surprised to find out that Clint Eastwood was slated to direct a long time ago, because they announced the project a long time ago in 2003. That's how long it was in development. And I am trying to imagine what Clint Eastwood would have done with it. So Clint Eastwood is one of those people that I like his movies. Um, and I could be wrong in this assumption, but he's one of those directors that doesn't really have like, at least to me, like a visual like flair that stands out.
Yeah.
That where you're like, oh, where you're like watching, you're like, oh, that's a Clint Eastwood movie. Um, I love some of his movies individually. Like I love Mystic River. I think Mystic River is a great film. But as a filmmaker, there's nothing about him that, not to say that he's not a good filmmaker, it's just like I don't like look at his stuff and go like, oh, that's signature Eastwood,
Right.
And
I agree.
I'm trying to imagine him taking this on and like can't really see it.
Yeah, I think it would be what I worry it would be is once again kind of a biopic that's taken a step back
Well,
and is just kind of observing the
yeah,
events as they kind of unfold and not really ever taking a personal point of view, the way that Damien Chazelle was able to do and with Ryan Gosling. I think it probably would have been a good film. I don't think it would have mattered to me nearly as much as Damien Chazelle's version of it does. But
yeah.
yeah, Clint Eastwood, he's a very skilled director. He makes good films. I've liked most of the films of his that I've seen. There's a few of his that I haven't liked, but yeah, for the most part, he's a really good director, and I think he would have made a good film. I just don't think I don't think it would have affected me personally as much.
I think he would have definitely showed them planting the flag. Because
Yeah.
he's
Oh yeah,
very like,
that would have been a very
he's
triumphant moment in his film. Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
definitely
Trump wouldn't be complaining about Clint Eastwood's version.
yeah. And I'm not complaining, as we've seen from like American Sniper is very much like
Yeah.
go America kind of movie. I mean,
Yeah.
it's well made. I'm not taking anything away from it, but
Right.
I have friends that when American Sniper came out that don't really go see movies a lot, and they are very much of the variety of like America, fuck yeah, and like that is a
Yeah.
the vibe they were rolling with, and he definitely would have had that moment in there. I think
Yes,
for sure, and
absolutely.
there'd be no complaints about it.
And it
But I'm
probably would
glad,
have
yeah,
made a ton of money.
that too. I mean, I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I don't want to just think it's the controversy that made this kind of
Right.
stall because
Yeah.
just so everyone listening knows, like this movie made. Let's see if I can pull it up here. It made $44.9 million in domestic and 60.7 million in other territories, so 105.6 million worldwide on a budget of $59 million. I think you have to make what they say like 3
Double
times
your budget, or is
your
it 3
budget. Your
times?
budget. It could be double or 2.
Oof.
So I mean, 105 million worldwide isn't ideal for a movie like this. It doesn't make it a total failure by any means.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Chazelle definitely felt that harder with Babylon, which was
Oh, yeah.
a huge flop. Um, I don't know if it was just that. I mean, I know for a lot of my friends, even the 3 people I remember I saw with 3 other buddies on opening night who liked it, but they all bitched and moaned about how long it was. And I wonder if that was if that played a part in it, because even in 2018, people were complaining like, "Oh, these movies are so long." And then also maybe the marketing might have. I wonder if the marketing implied that it would be more about the event and less about
Yeah, the man,
getting to know
right.
the man and getting to know these people as individuals, and then that could have
Yeah,
hurt it.
I think that's really fair. I'm just thinking about the poster, and it's literally a
It
profile
looks
of Neil
very more
Sperry
like yeah.
in a spacesuit with the moon
Yeah.
superimposed over it. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. Like it is very much like the moon landing is kind of the climax, and everything else before it is really just about Neil and his family and his work, and like that's about it. Like it's really just a domestic slash work drama up until it becomes we're going
It
to the moon.
really is.
And that's very close to the end of the film. So yeah, I can understand that critique. If I can't remember the trailers right now off the top of my head, maybe I should have rewatched them, but I don't remember the moon landing being in the trailers at all, but I could be
I
wrong.
don't
I
remember
could
it.
be
I
wrong.
don't remember they were either. And like
Yeah.
and also if you're going into a movie that's 140 minutes or give or take how long this is, you have to be aware that they're not making a 140-minute movie about one
Yeah.
singular event. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
even know if you could make a 140-minute movie just about the moon landing itself. Maybe you could. I don't know. I wouldn't want to watch that movie.
It's just like in
Really,
real
not.
time them going to the moon.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Um, I mean, for especially for someone that didn't know a lot about this stuff, I was soaking in all the things I did know about it, and that is what made it interesting. I was never bored throughout the movie.
Yeah.
I never really felt the runtime, and I think that could have been because I was so enamored with like the characters and their journey to getting to that point. And that's just a product of good writing and good directing, and then just good performances too.
Yeah.
That it wasn't. I really didn't. The whole moon landing sequence, which is really well done, was just the icing on the cake at that point.
Absolutely.
And
Amazing icing on the cake.
yeah. I mean, I love the trial and error of getting there, like to show that,
Yes.
like these are all the mistakes that were made leading up to this. This is why maybe some people thought like, oh, we're not going to be able to do this. This is why families involved are like, I don't want you to do this. I think you need to see all that so that pays off so much better in the end. And it is interesting when you're watching a movie about a real event because you already know, like, oh yeah, this happened. You've learned about it in school, like whatever. But a movie can make you lose yourself and make you forget that you've already learned this topic or you've been taught this topic already, and it feels like you're learning it for the first time. And I thought that is what the movie did. I was completely in step by step,
Yeah.
getting to like you said, it's a really great icing on the cake. It's really, I mean, I think it paid. You earn it, and I think by that point, what you see is definitely something well earned at that point. And I
Yeah.
think they know, like for a movie that's centered around this, they're like, okay, we have to make this part of the movie visually stimulating. It has to really kick, and it has to resonate with the audience, and I think it does. I mean, I just remember being in awe of it when I first saw it, and uh almost being like wanting a little like once you really, I mean, like I said, you feel like you've done it with him at that point.
Yeah,
like like you're
absolutely.
like I feel like I too went to the moon as well.
Right.
And
I've been there.
and, and put in all the hard work getting there too.
Yeah.
And
It's
that's what it
amazing.
feels like. It's so well like done and rendered, and yeah, I mean, and honestly, for a movie, I mean, the budget isn't huge too. I mean, I know like we talk about what it made relative to his budget, but it's not like a big budget movie. And there are moments where I feel like it looks and feels like it does. Like it feels a lot bigger than it is. And that's another testament of someone like working with skills to kind of that conveys a much larger scale piece than what maybe they're working with.
Right. I mean, I agree with all your points. I did not feel the runtime at all. I think it really just is so engaging, and I really love just all the work that they put into it. And that icing on the cake, that moon scene. I'm I agree with you. I'm in awe every time I watch it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful ending to the movie. The way that the sound goes out and the aspect ratio
Yeah.
goes to full IMAX. Just
Yeah.
I'm blown away every time. My breath
It's like
just is gone.
goosebumps, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then they, it's kind of a pretty straightforward scene from there on out. He says the thing, one small step for man. And
Yeah.
and then it becomes something really kind of sullen, and it's just Neil sitting with the memories of his daughter, and
That's what
it's
makes it so emotional too. Like, yeah.
incredible. It's something I've never actually seen a biopic. I've never seen a biopic really do something like that, where it really just really captured the emotional state of the subject that they're portraying.
Yeah.
And I think that really elevates this film, making it, I think it's up there with to this year's best picture winner Oppenheimer as one of the like really good biopics. Like, people like to
Yeah.
trash on biopics, and it's fair, there's so many bad biopics out there, but like we've been blessed with really good biopics in recent years.
Yeah, we have.
Like
We really
I
have.
think those are I think it really, I think First Man really deserves to be a part of that conversation.
I do too. I'm glad you brought up the moment about the daughter in that moment, because it's interesting, because if you're just looking at it from like as a film, from as a cinematic experience, it's the whole, I love the converging of like, at the start of like what he lost and the grief and all that, and then this big moment, finally achieving this really big moment. And these are the thoughts that kind of come together during this really significant part of his life and his journey, and kind of being in a moment where he can really, I guess, like almost like be alone and think about it and really put these things together. I thought that the emotional payoff is really great, and where it's not just about how visually great that part is. It's once, like you said, once that sets up and it's done, and then it's pretty much straightforward there, just kind of us being alone with his thoughts. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done, and just knowing from where like the movie starts and like kind of where his his character's at and his mindset, and then getting to such a pivotal moment of his life that concludes it, at least for the film. I thought that to have those two moments converge to such a really beautiful moment,
Yeah,
cinematically, was really well done. Yeah,
absolutely. I
probably one
mean,
of the most powerful parts of the movie.
it's so profound. And throughout the movie you see Neil, like at Karen's wake when his daughter dies, he has to go off into a separate room from everybody and lock the door to cry and have his
Yeah,
breakdown. He when his friends die, and they're talking about it at a dinner party, he's like, I want to go, I want to leave, and he ends up leaving his wife at the party, like just leaving her there and
yeah,
leaving, because he has to go somewhere. He cannot, he's such an emotionally withdrawn person. And then like it's so thematically brilliant, because then he's on the moon, and that's like the first time he can really like just be, he's at that point so far away from everyone else and he's really able to
yeah,
like sit in those feelings and let go of
yeah.
Karen, and, at least drop the bracelet onto the moon. And I just think, I don't know, I've never had a biopic really affect me like that, and I thought, I'm stunned by it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it really, and I mean, I think what surprised me about being affected by it was, like I said, I beyond what I learned in school, I didn't really know much about Neil Armstrong, and so I'm going into with a basic knowledge of it, but not nearly enough. And like you said, any good biopic kind of informs you about who this person was, what their character was, who this person was as a man. And I think that was so important. I mean, I guess like we kind of joked about like you could make a 140-minute movie about the moon landing itself, but it wouldn't have the emotional impact that it does if you didn't know Neil Armstrong as a person first, getting to that point. And I think that is so important. And I that could be the complaint of some that thinks that like the kind of land based stuff, human drama stuff, it might feel slow, it might drag. You want to see something that's more visually exciting, but it doesn't pay off without any of that stuff. I think you need it,
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I I feel like every character beat in that movie you need. I don't really think there's an ounce of fat on the movie at all. Like it feels like every moment uh is necessary
Yeah,
to for it to pay off.
it's a really lean film. I can't think of anything that isn't necessary. Everything in it feels like it is intentional and that it's meaningful and that it's building to its conclusion. It's a really well put together film
Yeah,
in
I
it's
agree.
all regards.
Yeah, I think it's great that you mentioned the Oppenheimer thing. I was just wondering. I wonder if Christopher Nolan directed this. It's probably
Yeah,
more financially successful, because
it's probably
Christopher
3
Nolan's
hours
name.
at that point. Yeah,
And it's probably 3 hours. And not to say, I mean, I loved Oppenheimer. Not talking shit,
yeah,
but like you
I
know,
yeah, same.
Christopher Nolan is one of those directors who's I think one of the only few directors working whose name alone guarantees a
Yeah,
successful box office run at this point. And the fact, I mean, not everyone could have turned a 3 hour historical epic about the creation of the atomic bomb into a $900+ million
yeah,
grossing movie.
insane,
Um,
insane.
but yeah, I mean, and honestly, First Man had a pretty good release date. Like, I mean, October wasn't a bad time to release it when it came out. It
Yeah,
opened the same weekend as Bad Times at the El Royale
yeah,
and Goosebumps 2 Haunted Halloween. Um, but I guess it was also dealing with residual kind of Venom at bit that opened like a week or two before, Star is Born as well. So there was
mm,
still a lot of competition. Um, I guess, but it felt like the fall would be a good time to open a movie like
yeah.
that. It'd be prime
I would
for
think so.
a successful run. Um, so on that deadline, they said they believe the flag controversy cost it like money as well. Um, and they also felt that and they also said the runtime they think might have cost it some money too. But I mean, at this point though, I don't even know if it might have made sense then. Movies that are
Yeah,
that long now are making pretty decent money. It just depends on the film and
right.
subject matter. I mean, I guess I earlier I said I don't think that controversy really affected things, but I guess when you're dealing with a subject, a person who is so identifiably like attached to an American historical moment,
Yeah,
and if you are to sway in any way where it's like if you're not depicting it as is, uh as we've all been taught, as everyone has the image of it, I guess there could be backlash for it. I
yeah.
understand his reasoning. I still understand his reasoning though
Yeah, I
for
mean,
how
I
he did
agree
it.
too. I think the moment, where he's remembering Karen would have been deeply diminished if we had spent a triumphant moment planting a flagpole into the dirt. Like, I just don't think it was necessary. Like, I love that America did that. I love that we did that. Like, I don't want anyone
Yeah.
to get me wrong. I think that's great. But I've seen the flag being planted. I watched it in elementary school. We saw the tape. I think what
Yep.
was more important to see was, for the film and the story that I was trying to tell was Neil and his emotions towards his grief that he's been dealing with this entire film. And I think it's a beautiful conclusion, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, I agree. Um in the same review with the guy who complained about the motion sickness stuff, I do like what he says about that particular controversy. He said those who would level charges against Chazelle should see the movie before jumping to any conclusions. Says Armstrong was an engineer, a pioneer, a father, and husband, and American. The movie depicts all of these things in great detail. So I think that is very true. And
Absolutely.
everything doesn't have to be force fed to you in order for you to get it.
Right.
I wonder if there were any conversations though, like studio wise, like for like, hey, should you? Are you sure you don't want to include this in here? That would be
Right.
to be the fly on the wall during that would have been interesting to see if there was any
Yeah.
pushback.
If they were thinking about doing some reshoots, like we got to do another reshoot because we didn't get that coverage of them planting the flag.
Yeah, I mean, even though this is only his third film, but he's coming off of a box office hit. He's coming off a
Yeah.
he's won an Oscar as a director, so there probably isn't a lot of pushback from him. If he, they're probably like, hey, do whatever you want. I think they kind of,
Yeah.
hate to say it, gave him the moon basically. We're like, hey, do what you want.
Right.
And at that point, it's so interesting now that as I read an article recently where he said because of Babylon, he doesn't think that he will be given the same amount of money for his next project just because he had the one huge bomb. And I think
Yeah.
that is unfortunate.
I agree.
It's crazy how like in Hollywood you are defined by your misses.
Yeah, he's going to be in director jail for a hot minute, and then the next picture he makes is going to be considerably smaller.
Yeah,
in scale.
And like honestly, I mean, I know Babylon had mixed reviews. I liked it. I know some people didn't like it. I was all
still
about
need to
it.
see it. I haven't seen it. That's been on my list for a while.
Well, talking about a movie that's long is long, but it's I thought it was worth it. But it also got mixed reviews from critics. But then like out of 4 films, he had 3 that were very well received and critically acclaimed, and yet one that was more mixed and it bombed. And like it does seem like director jail is very real.
Yeah.
And I guess he's currently in it.
Right.
Someone like Ari Aster might be on the verge. I don't know, after Beau is Afraid. Like it's always like it's interesting though, because but at least people like these guys are taking chances and doing things that are not totally conventional. And granted, like with something like First Man, this is a conventional on paper story and all that, but he does so much with it that makes it less so. And I think that is what makes it stand out amongst biopics like this. I don't think like we joked about Christopher Nolan. I think he could have done a lot of great work with this, but a lot of directors would have done it almost by the numbers, and that would have been boring too. Because I wouldn't want a movie just with like a bunch of like science jargon throughout, because like I'm like, all right, I mean, I think it needed everything, and I think this movie gave you all of it. It gave you the human drama, it gave you the science, it gave you like which is why it is as long as it is, because it needed to really be all these different things in order to work. And I worked for me. I know it worked for you.
I think it balances all those extremely well. It really worked for me. I wish it worked for more people. That would have been nice.
I kind of feel like I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably too early, but I think there will be a reevaluation phase for it as because my buddy was surprised that people call it underrated, but I was like, I mean, no one really talks about it a lot, really. I mean, they talked about it in that year, that little period when it was out, but I don't really hear people bring it up anymore. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised when you threw it out like that, like so quick. But yeah, it's not one of those that seems like it's talked a lot about amongst people that much as like one of the really good films of like the last few years. And I was trying to think. I haven't watched La La Land in a really long time. I was about to like say I would put it ahead of it, but I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone to get too angry because there are people that listen to this that love that movie.
Sorry. La La Land's great. I just didn't personally enjoy it. It is a fantastic and beautiful film. I think it technically is amazing. I just personally don't enjoy it, but I love that everybody that loves La La Land does.
It's true. And like it was interesting the year that movie came out. The movie I loved more was Arrival, which I love the cerebral
Arrival is incredible.
sci-fi movie more than La La Land. Not to take anything against it, but I think for the overall like emotional weight just based on my last viewing of La La Land, I would give the edge to First Man as far as his films are concerned.
Yeah.
But they both share that they're both very technically well made movies, very
Right.
different, but like very, he clearly has a great eye for film in general. And I'm glad with each project he shows like different aspects of his talent, which is he is definitely especially for someone his age, just has accomplished a lot and can really do a lot. And but I really think that this one showed the scope of his range too, like what he's able to do. And God, I'm trying to imagine like give him an even bigger budget. I know, like not like maybe not make a Babylon, but like maybe to make something like
Yeah.
on this level. Like I wonder what he can kind of do with that. Um, I there's no reason that he couldn't be in the same level as a Nolan and stuff right now. It's unfortunate that he had like a one bomb and now it's kind of like sending
Right.
him back.
I mean,
It's almost like
certainly.
I'd be nervous
Right.
like his first, if it was his first movie, I'd be like, oh well. But he came
Right,
out
yeah.
he came out the gate swinging with 3 significant movies that
Right.
showcase his talent.
Yeah,
So
I
it
mean,
blows my mind that
he's certainly a name that anytime I see him attached to a movie, I'm gonna put it on my watch list for sure. Like I'm gonna make an effort to see most Damien Chazelle films in theaters if I can. And I missed Babylon, but I'm still gonna make an effort. Like every time he comes up with a new movie, he's the name that I'm he's up there with Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, Scorsese, all of them for me. Like if he comes out with a new movie, I'm there.
yeah.
That I love Damien Chazelle.
For anyone that might be who hasn't seen First Man yet and is like sadly still on the fence, like what would you say to them like about why they should really give it a shot?
I mean, if you like Ryan Gosling, this is a great Ryan Gosling performance. If you enjoy learning about the history of the Apollo program at all, this is a good jumping off point to kind of spark your interest. If you're into movies that just have amazing music, this is one of the I just really love. I know I'm talking in hyperbole a lot, but I feel so strongly.
No,
This film, the score is incredible. It's so good. Like there's so much to love about this film, and like it's absolutely worth a shot. And I do agree with you. I think it will eventually get its reevaluation at some point. Like either it'll become viral because it's streaming somewhere and people will start watching it for whatever reason and being like, oh, this movie's actually really good. And I think that conversation will come and will happen. And hopefully I just it's such a great film. Just check it out, watch it.
Yeah,
There's a million
I would
reasons to check it out.
I would say too, and then maybe with the kind of coming off of Barbie and then going into the Fall Guy, if I'm not saying that people are just discovering Ryan Gosling now, but there might be a pocket of the audience that's like maybe they are like they never really
Right.
paid attention to him much before, and that's the one upside to having like a huge film like Barbie and like huge films that follow that is because some people will be like, oh, let me check out the other these other movies that this person did, and I hope that this is one of them that becomes kind of mandatory viewing for them. They're like, all right, if you're thinking of top Ryan Gosling performances, I think this is one of them. And like we said, it's not as showy as some of his other stuff either. I'm glad you mentioned the Blade Runner 2049 because that's the same. It's very subdued but powerful in its own right. But I do hope that because of he never went anywhere, but it seems like he has this like current career resurgence that hasn't stopped, that people go back and discover some of his other work, with this being one of them that they should definitely check out.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
top-notch stuff.
100%. Yeah, I agree.
All right, so with these deep dives, we give scores at the end, however you want to do it. If you want to do the letterbox format, if you want to do it letter grade, scale of 1 to 10, however you want to do it, what would be your score for First Men? I kind of
I
have a
think
feeling
when Yeah, yeah, you probably already know. When I first saw it, I think I did rate it as a 4.5 out of 5. However, on this most recent rewatch, I definitely gave it a 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I there's nothing I could fault this movie for, honestly. I think it's really great. I think it's a fantastic film. I think it's absolutely worth anybody's time if they love anything about movies or Ryan Gosling or good music or any of that. It's I love it. I love it. It's a 5 out of 5.
Guys, what he's saying is if you have taste, you should love First Man.
Yes, get some taste and go watch First
Yes,
Man.
listen, I would give it actually, I think upon first viewing at the theaters, I probably would have given it a 4.5. I felt a 5 from it watching it for this though. I think there's a lot of like to be said when you're watching a movie alone. It's like a little different sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, you're just kind of taking different things about it all in. And that's kind of what I got from it from this viewing. I was so immersed by all of it, even the more quiet moments where there wasn't much lot going on. But I was, that's just how good I thought the movie was in general. So I would also give it a 5 out of 5 letterbox score for
Yeah.
First Man. Yeah, it's a solid piece of work. And like we said, we hope it gets reevaluated soon.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're probably gonna think when you look it up, if you haven't looked it up, you're gonna be like, "Whoa, it has an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. It got good.
I know.
Got
Like,
good
how is this
review.
underrated?
It got good. It got good reviews and all that." But if you look at the grand scheme of like that year, and I
Mhm.
guess like maybe like look into articles about like what was being kind of touted as potential Oscar fare, and
Yeah.
this was kind of in that conversation for a little bit, and then it kind of petered out. And I think you'll kind of see why we find it underrated.
Yeah.
Because I think it was set up to be destined for greatness. Uh and not to say that's not great, but the greatness of being acknowledged by its peers in a more significant way. And it wasn't, and it
Yeah.
definitely deserves uh definitely deserves some more love, and hopefully it gets some more love now that Ryan Gosling is so popular. And
Yes.
honestly, uh, I think Damien Chazelle too. Like if you're going back to look at, I mean, it's only 4 movies, but you can just kind of see the progression. Even if you don't love everything that he's done in each movie, there is a genuine progression of someone flexing their creative muscles as a filmmaker. And you may not like everything that he's put out, but you can respect, someone that's clearly growing with each project. So I think
Absolutely.
this is another example of that.
Yes. I'm so happy to be to have been able to talk about First Man with somebody who likes it as much as I do. Honestly, that's so exciting. I love that. It's been so
No,
great.
cool, man. I'm just glad that you picked it. I mean, I
Yeah.
never know what to, like with the deep dives. If someone doesn't know what to pick, I'll throw a movie out there like, oh, if you don't, because I'm doing trying to get someone else on. They're like, oh, I don't want to pick it. It's too like nerve wracking.
It's a
Can you
big
just give me a
choice.
list? Can you just give me a list of movies? But it was like you had that one already locked in the chamber, ready to go, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
It's
cool,
it's
man,
it's
yeah.
always sitting there in the back of my mind. It's like the second anybody mentions Neil Armstrong or space movies or anything, I'm like, have you seen First Man? That movie's really good.
Yeah,
It's
that's
like it's
cool.
always there.
I was like, it's gonna take him time to like schedule it. It's gonna take him time to pick the movie, and he was like, "Nah, this is the movie, and we could do it next week." And I was like, "This is the easiest one I've
Hell yeah.
put together." So thank you so much, Wes. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. And it was also cool to actually be able to like kind of speak with you like one on one. Like the last time you were on, there were other people on, and which is fun too. That
Yeah,
also has
absolutely.
it. That also has its perks when there's like a bunch of talking heads.
Yeah.
But to kind of like get a better idea of like what you kind of like movie wise, and I follow your TikTok and stuff too. You are the epitome of what cinephile should be. Very opinionated. I love that too. And so it'll be great to, again, you're welcome back whenever you want to come back. If you ever have a movie that you want to do this for again, just let me know and we will set something up. 'Cause I enjoyed the conversation a great deal.
Hell yeah, that'd be great. I'm so honored to be here. So honored to be back. This has been great. I agree 100%. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'm like blown away. Thank you so much for your kind words. Yeah. Thank you. I love First Man, and I love Back to the Blockbuster, and I love talking about movies, and I'm happy to do it whenever and wherever.
Nice. And that's what we like. We love movie fans here. That's what Back to the Blockbuster is all about. Once again, thank you, Wes, for joining us on our deep dive spinoff. We're going to link all your stuff at the bottom of the description of this episode, but tell people once again where they can find you and what you're doing. What exactly? So you have your own podcast now. What exactly is like kind of like the format? Like what do you guys really discuss?
So we are the Film Somniacs. I do that with Film Gunch from TikTok. We kind of what we do is every month we spin a wheel that has a like subject on it. This month it was Library of Congress, so we picked films that have been selected by Library of Congress for preservation, and that was what we each pick one of that topic to then watch and discuss. And then we also we try to throw in a new movie every month. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes we have to reach back into the classics and be like, oh well, we didn't go see the same new movie this week, so we'll have to watch an older movie, and that happens, and that's great. And yeah, you can find us anywhere that podcasts are played, and we're also on YouTube, and we love doing it, and it's really great. And Film Gunch is on TikTok. He does game streaming and talks about movies as well. And then I am West Talk Movies on TikTok. And I think the future of TikTok's a little shaky right now. So if you want to follow my letterboxd, it's Wespresso, WESPRESSO, and you can find me on Instagram at Wespresso Bean. And yeah, I am always talking about movies. I try to consume a wealth of film, and I don't like to get niche down into any one genre, so I will always be talking about all kinds of films on any of my platforms.
Nice. That's good to hear. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing about TikTok. We're finally gaining traction on TikTok, and I was like, oh, of course, that's fine. As soon as we gain traction on there, they're like, oh, it might be taken away.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, but thankfully there's so many different avenues to catch us on. So like we are jumping into YouTube now too. It's just like in its infancy, but we're trying to start that up as well. So yeah, I definitely know the feeling of trying to spread across different platforms, just in case one platform happens to go belly up one day. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but at least for now we're all good until whatever happens. But
yeah. We'll still be here talking about movies in one way or another.
Yeah, nothing's gonna stop us. We'll be here somehow talking about movies.
Absolutely.
Once again, thank you for joining us. Much like the main show, guys, you can listen to the Deep Dive spinoff wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods. They're all really good, but we are part of the Playlist Studio Podcast Network, and they have their own app in the iOS store or in that pesky Google Play Store. If you're one of those green bubblers with a Samsung phone, you can get it there as well. Like I said, we are also getting more involved on YouTube, so we'll have more information on that coming at you shortly. By the time you hear this episode, we will be doing some of our movie anniversaries for April, because we'll be done with the March stuff by the time you hear this. So I know for sure we are doing Kill Bill Volume 2, Mean Girls, and Go. And then we're going to have a listener's choice where we give you 3 or 4 to choose one, and you guys will get to pick what our other anniversary movie will be. It's very daunting doing movie anniversaries this year. 1999 alone, any movie turning 25 it's a lot. And then if you throw in anything that came out in 2009 and just go, and then like 20 years for 2004, it's a lot. But we're doing
2004 is a stacked year.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. We're doing our best to get as many of them out as we can, trying to pick ones that, of course, that we enjoy, trying to also pick ones that are popular. Like we went back and forth about doing The Matrix for March, and we actually tried to leave that up to you guys, and you guys picked Dawn of the Dead from 2004. So at least we could blame it on you guys that no one picked The Matrix. We kind of could take it off of us a little bit. But yeah, look out for all of that stuff coming at you soon. Again, Wes, thank you. Hope to see you again on here very soon. And it's been great. Until next time, guys. Peace.